Hello and welcome today. We're here with Mirko Kleiner, who's going to be presenting on There Are No Agile Contracts. I'm Emily Ruffle, Head of Insights at the Agile Business Consortium, and this session is in partnership with Flowdays, Lean-Agile Procurement Alliance and the Agile Business Consortium. Just a little bit before, sort of a housekeeping before we start. This will be an interactive session. We will be inviting you to a mural board shortly, so any problems, let us know. Feel free to just ping any questions or technical issues that you have in the chat. Mirko will be inviting questions, so please keep yourself on mute during the presentation when you're not talking, but feel free to unmute and join in. And if you haven't already, feel free to introduce yourself and where you're joining from today. So for the exciting bit, today we are joined by Mirko Kleiner, co-founder of Flowdays and president of the Lean-Agile Procurement Alliance, so LAP Alliance, all-rounder, sort of thought leader in Lean-Agile Procurement, CIPS Award Winner from 2018, and all-round good guy. So over to you, Mirko.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks for having me, guys. It's a great pleasure. And yeah, I want to use this time today with you to talk about why I believe that there are no agile contracts and why we even need to rethink the way we contract today. So we're going to start with some very small amount of slides, go into some interactions, and then I'm going to share with you one of our success story. So I'm also going to tell you and walk you through how we do it differently. So it's not just about how you could and should and so on. So we are really living and breathing agile values and practices in this not so common domain, contracts and contracting. So yeah, just for you, I'm not sharing my screen. I have here some YouTuber streaming setup, so please just go and enlarge my video stream in Zoom. I think that it should be possible on the top right. You have different views where you can switch to see my video stream full screen. So why I think there is no agile contract? Well, first of all, we need to talk about the term agile and contract, and maybe it's a bit, a tiny detail, but there is contra, which means, in my opinion, against or opposite in the word of contract, which if you look at the definition, and I just looked up in Wikipedia or somewhere what a contract should be. It's a legal document where we both parties agree, and unfortunately in our day-to-day job we see more of this take it or leave it situation where we really have this contra mentality, or if you think about it, we often refer to agile values in the contract, but there are penalties in it, and we are putting all the risks to the vendors and so forth. So how agile is that from a vendor perspective? So I would like to start with a short exercise, and before that, just to before we share the link to the mural and we set up the exercise and the breakout rooms, I'm going to explain you what we want to talk about it first to set the scene. So currently I see here a small abstract point of view how we contract today from idea. So the whole value stream, if somebody has a new idea of a product, service, whatever, a partnership, on the very left and on the very right, we have set up hopefully an agile cross-functional team that takes over responsibility in delivery. So we are quite agile if it comes to ideation, and we are hopefully agile if it comes to delivery, but all the way through in the middle, somehow we still have this more of transactional way of working, where we put a lot of focus to paperwork. And I would like to invite you, and Emily will share the link and set up the breakout rooms in a minute, to to think about what are the current challenges in contracting, and put at the top some of the stickies, and then at the bottom think about, in your group, how would we source something super complex in just one day? If we just have one day, what would be different if we add some agile values and practices here? How might that help us out? So let me just share how it will look like in Mural. So if you follow the link that Emily just pasted into the Zoom chat, you will end up on our whiteboard. And just the most important tip that I can give you is on the very left, you have the toolbar with the stickies. Just drag them in, start typing. That's all. That's the magic. It's nothing more about that. So Emily, should we spend, how many people? We have 70 people, so maybe 7 breakout groups. And we, let you discuss for about 5 minutes. And if somebody in the group could take some notes on the mural, would be fantastic. And then we come back and see what you have discussed about. I think everybody is back, are they? So welcome back, and we stop here with the exercise. So thank you very much for your input. So what are the current challenges in contracting? I mean, you came up with so many points that we experienced in our day-to-day work as well. So the main, I usually reduce it to 3 aspects. Is first of all, the way we work in contracting, or all the way through, it's also the tendering, the creating proposals, etc., is really transactional and not really collaborative, what we are looking for in a more agile way. So secondly, the people that are necessary, that have the wisdom and the expertise, often also internally, so procurement people from the business, but also lawyers. But let's not forget the people that will do the job internally and with the vendor are far too late involved. And this slows us down. So usually this, from idea till first value delivery, for a complex sourcing case, this could be months, sometimes years. Which is not really agile. And how would agile values and principles, so help us out in this trap? And it was exactly our motivation as we started Lean-Agile Procurement. It was our main guiding question to say, okay, let's imagine something super complex that we can't specify in a day or whatever, and we don't have the wisdom where the direction goes to. So what can we do to still agree, find the right partner internally, externally, set up the team, and also agree on a contract within 1 day or even less? That was our guiding question. And the secret sauce is so simple. It's really that simple. Just let me go back to my slides. It's really, putting the right people together, right? We know this principle in Agile, setting up a cross-functional team. And that's exactly what we are doing in Lean-Agile Procurement. So if you have just 1 day, you would bring the stakeholders together, the end users, your lawyer, the vendors and their lawyers, if needed, their sales group, but also the people that will do the job. And we took this principle and said, okay, what if the people that will be responsible in delivery are with us from the start, and we add just any other capability we need. For example, if we work over here in Switzerland with a lot of banks, as you can imagine, where compliance is a big issue. So why don't we add a compliance officer to the team? Maybe sometimes just temporary. So this speeds up the way we work. Then secondly, we need to accept uncertainty, and we can learn here from other departments and businesses like startups and innovation teams that, have already this uncertainty in their DNA, and hopefully you are not writing anymore 100 pages business case, and for example, the business model canvas where you accept that this is a living document. And we took this idea, we always start with a business case, and we realized the business case is not enough. If you need to set up a team, no matter if it's just internal stuff, or which, by the way, is often as complicated as setting up a mixed team with a vendor or a completely outsourced team, we need to ask several further questions. And therefore, we developed a Lean Procurement Canvas. And we could take over a lot of information from the business case already. So we start in the center with why. Why are we doing, or what's the purpose of this partnership, of this product, of this initiative, whatever it is? What's the vision of it? What are the next business objectives we are looking for to reach? What are our overall hypotheses with this product or services? And then on the right-hand side, who is the customer? Who will take profit from that? And what are their needs? So it's more about the why and what we are focusing at, and then the people that have the capabilities and expertise, products and services should take care of the how. Often, if this is an outsourcing case, we then have to start a conversation with the vendors. What of their services might support our needs and business objectives? Now, this is, you would say, what's new? Okay, the canvas, nice. But it's not about the tool. It's about the conversation we are starting. It's about the process we are starting, the collaborative approach we are starting. And it's also, it turned out that this is as important, the social and culture fit between all the parties involved, internally, cross-functional, but also with the vendor. Do we like these guys? Could become an essential question in your complex delivery. So at least for Switzerland, we found the holy grail. The Lean Procurement Canvas is an Agile contract, or as I prefer to say, a Lean Agile agreement. Now, we talked about contract, Agile contracts. There might be no Agile contract. Maybe it's more of an agreement, but what is it? And therefore, we want to go back to the mural, and this time spend another 5 minutes and ask ourselves, what makes a good partnership? What makes a contract agile or an agreement? And what are usual challenges in terms of contracting all around that? So Emily, if I might ask you, I'm gonna share the direct link to this mural. If you spend another 5 minutes and have a short discussion about that. Excellent. I think everybody is back. So thanks for that. I hope this made you think a bit, because if we look at the first column, what makes a good partnership, it's we are looking for win-win attitude, respect, honesty. it's basically for me, this is what agile values means, right? And then obviously what makes a contract agile is having this adaptability, flexibility, that both understand that this is complex and we need to have a different way of legal agreement, while then in the challenges we see we are often not yet there. Now, let's move on to how we see that on our end. So a lot of people think that agile contract or lean agile agreements, as we prefer to say that, is it's just time material, right? And this is wrong. Time material is just one way how you could do that. And to be honest, it's quite unfair if we as suppliers are proposing an agile contract is just time material, because it puts all the risk to the vendor side, to the buyer side. So there are plenty other contract types possible, and I would like to emphasize, and look, we do not have the time to go into that today, but what I want to emphasize with is there are also in the meanwhile a lot of, as I call them, fake agile contracts. So for example, if you would look for payment per story points, if you're familiar with that, just another way of estimation, that makes no sense at all. So think about who is in control of this estimation, and does that bring any more value to the customer? So this is definitely not a good approach that we would not recommend. Yeah, Emily?
Hi, Mirko. So we've just got a question from Manuel. He's just said, can we define what we mean by agile contract? So is it a contract for an agile project, a contract built in an agile way, or a contract that is flexible enough to survive an agile project? Is there some clarification required on that one?
Yeah, thank you. So I don't have a definition that is, legal proof for it, but in my understanding, it's an agile contract is the output of a conversation where both parties agree that they can't, that they accept uncertainty and how they handle it. That could be that we don't know the scope, we just have a vision. That could be that we agree on some expected outcomes, or that we just want to extend our workbench in a different way than we do it today. Or it could be even a subscription. So traditionally, the people out there in the legal departments, they know exactly what's a fixed price, they know what's a service agreement, but they are not yet so familiar what are what's in the gray zone, what are other implementation possibilities. So I hope this answers your question, Manuel, for the moment. Otherwise, we could continue this discussion later on. So what is important to us? I mentioned here this continuum where one factor is risk delegation. But what we are looking for is having a conversation about a bunch of other drivers, like, for example, what's the expected return? What's your level of product market fit? How we deal with intellectual property? What's your stakeholder complexity, and so forth. So we've developed a bunch of such criteria, which we apply first internally. We have a discussion. What's our opinion on that? Should we put all the risks to the vendor? That could be a valid decision, but then we need to live with the consequences. They might put some extra buffers on top, so it becomes more expensive. So, by the way, I'm going to share those documents and also the slides. And if we have this conversation internally around those relevant criteria, we can select more easily which is a more optimal contract type. And we're going to redo that with the vendors as well to have this not a negotiation, but more an honest commercial conversation. And it also helps us to find a more optimal sourcing strategy. So I want to walk you through very briefly what could be achieved doing that and how does that look like in practice. So one of our examples is that recently got awarded by the procurement community was with Swiss Casinos. We sourced an ERP system in just 4 weeks. You might think like, 4 weeks, so what? The benchmark is 12 months. So that was incredible, unthinkable for those guys. So what is the approach that we developed? So it's basically 4 steps. We are setting up a cross-functional team, which is not just responsible for sourcing and contracting, which basically is, you might have heard of the term DevOps team. It's like DevOps on steroids. So it's the people that are taking ownership, not just about the sourcing, they will take over ownership also about delivery. So we set that up together with the main stakeholders. We give them a direction. We talk about vision, purpose, everything. And then in step 2, we do everything that we usually do in sourcing. So we do some design thinking workshops, if you like, to gather the needs, if the customer base is already identified. So we invite them. We come up with shortlisted potential vendors and solutions. And in step 3, we're going to invite those shortlisted vendors to improve a draft of an Agile agreement, but also to come up with their proposals. And here is the magic sauce. I'm going to walk you through that because collaboration, coming back to my initial quote, bring the right people together is so essential. So to give you a flavor, so in step 1, we are using the canvas, and the canvas is not enough. We are ending up with tons of attachments, but it's our guiding tool to force the conversation. We're setting up a team, we align it. In this case, with the ERP, we did a design thinking workshop or whatever to practice that is appropriate for you with the accountants, with people from HR, with the guys that are going to use this ERP system. And so it was quite easy then to understand what are their needs. And we also asked them, what are your priorities and what are the nice to haves? And that's a big potential for not sourcing things. So going fast forward to the big room event where we bring together competitors in the same room simultaneously. It sounds weird, I know, but it's important for many reasons. So first of all, we want to get in touch with the people we might work with, not just their sales crew or their decision takers or their lawyers. They are welcome as well, but we want to get in touch with the people we might work with. On this slide, you see the CFO, which was the sponsor, and he was walking them through their company vision, his vision for this new ERP solution, the objectives, some bounding conditions, constraints, and so forth. And instead of wasting our time with long-lasting pitches, we had a conversation with the vendors simultaneously about that, about their vision, how this fits into each other. So what are we doing? I mean, if the objective is a signed contract at the end of the workshop, we need to do things like estimation, solution design, just everything that we usually do as vendors or internals separately without the buyer side. So just imagine we do that together. So here we, for example, hand over a staple of cards, which are user stories, customer needs. So we still specify the things we know out of this design thinking workshop, for example. And we hand it over to the 3 vendors. So each of them gets its own staple and we let them estimate in front of us. Now, do it. And we also let them come up with an Agile roadmap, which you see on the right-hand side, where they come up with business objectives per column, which a column represents a time box, but also acceptance criteria or key results when those business objectives have been met, and even KPIs, how we measure that we are on track. It's recommended that those are more outcome-based, obviously. So this becomes part of the contract. So we're going to measure against this roadmap. But again, it's a living document. So we might have approaches to even change the roadmap on this high level. So it's fascinating to observe the vendors, how they, for example, estimate. Often it happens that one of the vendors, the most senior guy, takes over and almost burns out, while other vendors, they start splitting up nicely and they have the time to come up with the right questions. So which one you take? So this is a great opportunity to test how a collaboration could look like.
Mirko, just
Yes.
to pause you there. So Manuel's come back with, did you still have all the 3 suppliers in the room at the same time?
Yes.
Yep. And then did all the ERP vendors understand how Agile is done? So if not, how did you manage the newbies for this sort of introduction?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So to be honest, it was a bit of a shock. I thought ERP vendors are already used to Agile, Scrum, and so forth, but they weren't, not at all. So in their initial speech about their company, their values, and references, etc., which we usually give them just a 5 minutes time slot, they said, yeah, we have experience in Agile. And then you let them estimate, you do something very easy from an Agile perspective, and it becomes obvious that at least the people that are in the room are not capable, not familiar with Agile at all. So what we are doing is we immediately, if we recognize something like that, we immediately make it a topic. It's not about blaming. It's, hey, you said you're Agile. It seems you aren't. How we deal with that? And then it's about their reaction. You know, if they push back or if they agree and say, yeah, you're right, those people have but we would love to go on the journey with you together, then it might be a different situation. So what we want to do in this workshop is not just getting the proposals by the competitors and then decide based on their proposal. We want to give them the chance to learn from each other, improve their proposal, their solution design, their estimations, their roadmap, etc., so that in the end we could choose the best of it. So that's a nice statement here. So we observe. We really share and demo intermediate results, obviously, and there is always the question about how we deal with things that are confidential, like the commercials or intellectual property. Yeah, we respect that, and the team needs to figure out how to deal with that prior to the workshop. So often we just do private sessions and with each of the vendors around the commercials, and if then something occurs in those private sessions that is relevant to everybody, we immediately share it with the others. That's the beauty of having all there at the same time simultaneously. We immediately could share that back with the vendors. So to give you an example, what really was a challenge is in this ERP case, it turned out that the licensing model was something beside the process design, solution design, etc., something most complex that could drive the price in one or the other direction. So as we realized that, we immediately stopped the workshop and we asked the 3 vendors to forget about being competitors and to co-create the optimal licensing model together in the next 15 minutes, and they just did. Right, so that's the power of collaboration. And so there is also, in any proposal, there is often a list of assumptions and risk. If that happens, our estimation won't be valid and we need to talk again and re-estimate. We usually spend between 1 hour and 2 to 4 days in such a workshop. This ERP case, it was 2 days, where we had the opportunity to talk about any concern from all the parties, no matter it's the buyers, it's the stakeholders, it's the vendors, and to mitigate all those risks and hopefully answer a majority of those questions. So the team came in with an Agile contract draft. So the lawyers often have no clue what does that mean. So we use the Lean Procurement Canvas as our guiding tool, and we explain then. We invite the lawyer, the internal lawyer, or if you need an external, and explain them first. We educate them first. What is Agile, and what's our preferred way of working from the buyer side as a cross-functional team. So that gives us then, based on all the aspects of the Lean Procurement Canvas, we come up with a collaboration model, financial model, etc. So if we go into this workshop, we just talk about it with the vendors. And if you are looking for a win-win situation, if you are really want to become partners instead of just you are just a supplier and I'm the customer, then we have an honest conversation about any aspect of those paragraphs, and we are even willing to adapt the clauses in the Agile contract. So we ask the vendors, for example, where do you disagree? What could be improved in the contract? What are cost drivers? What does not fit on your service or whatever? And then finally, and this is also an iterative process, we go into private sessions where they also we develop also the cost structure, how they estimate and what numbers we are expecting together with all the vendors. So the final negotiations is then really just about putting the numbers, having a conversation, and you can even see here, they signed the flip chart, done. Negotiations usually take less than 20 minutes. It wouldn't be Agile if we don't present our intermediate results of this workshop to the end users. So it's often we run a hackathon or a proof of concept in parallel because we have the people there that actually could do the job. So we give them not just the opportunity to present their product on the happy path, all the functions and features that work anyway. We invite them to do a planning with us in the morning with the most challenging questions we have. And we see then in the evening, while a demo, a public demo in front of real users and stakeholders, did they did they deliver what they promised, and how do they react if they failed or if they just partially delivered? Right, so closing the case, you need to expect the unexpected. So in this ERP case, the team was empowered to decide. They decided at the end of the workshop for vendor A, and this guy with the crown here on the photo, he was from vendor B, and the team said, "You're an extraordinary person. Would you like to join our team as well?" I've never seen happening that something like that happened in a traditional sourcing. So just a summary. So we spent 4 weeks, 2 days a week. The team met to run the show, develop everything, go through the approach. The vendors, they just spent 2 days together, so it was also very efficient for them. And yeah, so it's super fast, less effort. For if you're in procurement, you might be interested in creating savings. We do that because we do not source the nice to haves, and mainly it's recommended even by the vendors that lost. So why is that topic important? Contracts, contracting. You need to know that up to 80% of business revenue is in the hands of sales and procurement. So if you're an Agile coach, a Scrum Master, if you're a project manager that has an influence, has contact into that area, here you can really make a difference, a direct difference for your business right away. So this is us, Lean-Agile Procurement Alliance. We also offer certification workshops on that, not just on the approach, also on Agile contracts. So you have seen the continuum. We deep dive into examples, when to apply which kind of examples, the advisory bot. And yeah, some tips to close. Onboard your legal team from the start. It's the same with the vendors, with anybody else that needs to be involved in such a case, because often the lawyers are not familiar. What is Agile? What's the impact on the contract? And they need a lot of time to get familiar with that. Educate everybody. That's a logical consequence. And co-create the contract, the legal document, together as a team, as a cross-functional team, together with the lawyer, compliance, and even with the vendors. Give them the chance to improve it. And hey, if you start to add Scrum and describe Scrum, you miss the point, because what we don't want to have is a 50 pages contract. It should please keep it as lean as possible as well. And yeah, so the Lean Procurement Canvas is an opportunity to inspire you. What are the right questions? We're also going to share a cheat sheet with all the questions per section. And it's also free for download. Yeah, thank you very much. That's it.
Mirko, I know we've just come to time, but I had a question from Mike Rowland. So, were the estimations they came up with firm commitments or non-binding?
It was for firm commitments, and we informed the vendors prior to the workshop that this is not just Mickey Mouse, doing some exercises and then we see how far we get. It was the ambition from the start that we want to decide and sign an improved contract together with the selected vendors. So yeah.
Oh, and I've got another one from Richard and Stuart. So they're both lawyers. They're both very familiar with agility and Agile. They're both on the call. They've just sort of said so they've got some examples from a recent case law where Agile does not work in practice and the contract did not help. So I think there is potential for maybe a second session where we can maybe discuss
Sure.
and take that as a follow-up from this session. I don't know if there's any other questions that have popped up.
There was one other question, Mirko, just a quick one. I think it was about, public tenders. How would you sort of manage? What would you sort of suggest with the approach to that? I'm just trying to look at the question here.
Yeah. So we have run several public sourcings and public tenders, and a lot of people think it's not possible to source in public sector more agile, but it is. So look at the approach, more of a framework. So what can we do prior a public tender? How can we improve it while a tender? And what we need to do to get an agile contract as a result out of that. So it is possible. It has some special constraints by law, and it's highly recommended that you get an expert in public sourcing law in the team, that you are also compliant with it. But we have done it in Russia, in New Zealand, in UK, over here in Switzerland. So it is possible. And by the way, there are initiatives that agile contracts get for more complex stuff, get the preferred way of sourcing in the public sector. So currently there are initiatives on parliament levels in different countries we are following, pushing.
Thanks, Mirko.
Right, yeah, we are 3 minutes over. Thank you very much, Mirko, for your time today, and thank you everyone for joining, participating and engaging. Please feel free, you've got the mural link, there is an area there to sort of help us improve for next time. And I think that's probably it. We will be in contact. I think it does sound like there's going to be another session where we can discuss further, maybe different examples. And yeah, if you've got any other questions, please pop them on the mural. We can pick them up as well. And that's it from myself. Thank you very much, Mirko.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm gonna stay. I don't know if you close the meeting immediately, but otherwise I'm gonna stay another 10 minutes to ask some ultimate questions. Don't want to leave the people with these burning questions. Yeah.
I've just seen a few more pop through as well. So Curtis has just sent through, how does this approach work when suppliers are unknown? Well,
this is the normal way. This is the normal situation that we don't know the vendors. So this is a typical task in procurement, that they do market research, and we just include the team into that task from the beginning. There is also the opportunity, procurement calls it the RFI, request for information, and we have done that very efficient. Instead of getting hundreds of proposals on this request for information as paper, we asked the interested vendors to just send out a 1-minute video why we should invite them or why we should consider them. So the team will come up with crazy creative ideas to tackle such challenges. So yeah, have trust in the cross-functional team. Please come on mute if you have another question. I will, as told, I'm gonna stay another, maybe 5-10 minutes. Or feel free to contact me via LinkedIn or email. Sure.
I don't know if Stuart and Richard, do you want to mention your work that you've been?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, Stuart, so you're there as well. And Stuart and I actually put on a talk with the Society of Computers and Law a couple of years ago. Stuart arranged it, I should say. And Stuart was proposing the motion that you could draft a contract for Agile. I was opposing that. it was my little breakout group. I was sharing some of my slides and giving some of the recent case law, showing how it doesn't necessarily work. It'd be useful to have a chat, Mirko, get Stuart involved and have a three-way chat, perhaps.
Sure.
And perhaps have a follow-up session. It'd be good to sort of thrash out some ideas. What do you think, Stuart?
I'd be very happy to do that. It's a while since we've crossed swords, isn't it, Richard?
Yeah, so maybe just for the audience, I forgot to mention that there is no silver bullet. The lawyers usually look for a template, and there are hundreds of potential templates out there, but please do not start with a template. So, the good lawyers
so
tell you that.
the double act that Richard and I normally run is, as Richard says, that I speak for the fact that you can draft contracts for that support Agile, and Richard knocks them back down again, or knocks me back down again, but I should say. My general starting premise, though, is that most lawyers, as you say, start with a template, and all templates tend to be based on waterfall or sequential contracts.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong place to start. You have to look at the different cultural aspects of Agile and start from a different perspective. That doesn't mean to say you throw everything out.
No.
There's plenty of good stuff that needs to be done that is contained within existing contracts, but you have to take a different approach and a different understanding. And I think you're absolutely right. There's an awful lot of lawyers out there who've heard Agile expressions and know the terminology, and they dump that into a contract and assume that makes it Agile. It doesn't. And therefore you need to start from that different perspective.
Yeah, that was thanks Stuart. I can't agree more. That's the main reason why we came up with this idea of having those criteria. We also developed a game around that, where we put them on cards and we just put them on the table and say, hey, time to market, how important is that? What do you mean with that? Well, intellectual property, exit scenario, different criteria, which then it's not about the criteria, it's about the conversation we have, the alignment we create. And then with those outcome of that conversation, it will be much easier for a lawyer to come up with a draft of a contract.
Yeah. There's also, Mirko, you're mentioning cultural things. There's another cultural difference. I think you said you were Swiss. And so you're working with Swiss law, which is, as I understand it, mostly German law based. German law has a very different approach to contracts from English law. And in a sense, German law fills in a lot of blanks for the contracting parties. So they don't have to say lots of things that in English law you have to say. If you don't say them in English law, then the contract is simply defective. Yeah. So, which is why English law contracts tend to be much longer and much more detailed than, say, German law or Swiss law contracts, because we just have to spell out so much more, which makes Agile working in that one-day procurement you were talking about a lot more of a challenge. It's not going to work in that way. So it'd be interesting to explore that. But
it's interesting what you're saying, because we have cases, in UK, but also in New Zealand. Here, this is with the Auckland Council. It's even public sector. Where let me just put myself away. Where they came up with very crazy ideas like, why don't we just accept the vendor's contractual framework, not even giving it a minute of reviewing it, because the vendor's cases were so different, their business cases and services. So instead, that was a recommendation by the lawyer of them. So instead, they came up, the ambition was to have one page, but they in the end ended up with a 3-pager, which they put in first priority and said, okay, those are the main aspects we need to talk about and you need to agree at. We don't care about all the details. But if you have an agreement on those, I don't say you need to do that this way, right? But it's just how crazy shit can get if you include a lawyer in the development of the contract.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, it's I'll just share this one screen. I'll say Stuart and I gave this talk, and you might like to have a look at this one, which is a quote from an audit report contained in the failed project. You can have a quick look at it. This is between De Beers and Atos Origin, and Atos Origin got thrown off the project. Intended to be developed agile style, as you can see, and it all sets it up. Have a quick look through, all very DSDM as an approach. It says at the end, can work fine in the right context and of course with the right customer. So Stuart will be familiar with this case, as I have beat him over the head with it several times, and doesn't work too well. And again, the report carries on. It was quite a detailed report given in the judgment of how Atos Origin thought the thing was going wrong. But I don't want to give too much away, because if we do a rerun, I'll tell you all about it. But it's an example of it has been tried, and when it goes wrong, the contract doesn't necessarily solve your problems. But it'd be great to pick this up sometime in a rerun. And
yeah, you know, I mean, there are some empirical data that even agile projects and partnerships fail, right? We need to be honest on that. So it's not the perfect world. Still, a lot of things can go wrong. But what I'm saying is, what does a contract help us out? I mean, or let's phrase it this way: what's the value of going to make a case and spend years in front of a court to get some penalties, some money back? What's the value for the end customer out of that tasks? And that's another discussion we can have.
That's another.
Yeah. So
I was going to say, you finished it by saying the value for the end customer. I was going to say it's tremendous value for the legal profession. But
yeah, exactly. So there is a question by Ofemi. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thanks very much for your talk, Mirko. So my question is around public procurement, and I particularly do a lot of consulting with them for the NHS, so a particularly regulated and difficult area, and tenders. So I can see where this would be of benefit. So let's say they put out a tender, and then usually what happens is they invite prospective vendors to come and give a presentation, and usually be in separate sections. So I can see where that would be a benefit in terms of helping them formulate a much better proposition, especially in situations where they know where their North Star is. They're just not always clear how to get there. And that's because it's a changing environment. How do you perceive the narrative? So you provide a service as the Lean Agile Procurement provider. How would you describe it to a potential purchaser? So would you say we need X amount of days? Because what you described, I think, earlier was that you can do anything from X to Y. So how do you gauge, for instance, right, for your organization and what you want to achieve, depending on how complex it is? And we're talking about situations where it's unknown, as in you know what the outcome is, you're just not sure how to get there. So how do you, or how would you advise, especially in public, ideally healthcare, you have a discussion with an organization as a consultant, i.e. you need to dedicate this amount of time. And just to summarize, because the challenge is getting the required professionals within, let's say, a hospital, all in the room for, an hour even, is very, very difficult, let alone for half a day, 2 days, etc. So that's my...
Yeah, very good question. I don't know where to start. So first of all, I'm currently supporting the Swiss Transport Association, a public agency. They are looking for new trains, which is a multi-billion pounds, Swiss francs, whatever project. Their current lead time is 8 years just for sourcing. It's insane. Okay. So first of all, we need to have a pain. Because often it's a regulatory change, they need to adapt now and not in 8 years or whatever, or something that, like Corona crisis, was a huge catalyst for what we are doing. So if there is a pain, and it's you don't need to have it, but it's just very supportive, then we often get the spotlight from the management, and we get this support. And if we don't have this leadership support, we don't start. It's that simple. Okay.
Yeah, because it's not going to work. Okay.
So it's black and white. It's there is no gray on that. Then secondly is, you mentioned how can we get the people in the same room for whatever hours, days. Well, that's an old discussion. I mean, SAFE had that with its PI plannings and so on. So you need to do your math. Is it more effective or more important to have a decision at the end of this workshop and contract signed? Because the business impact might be millions if we have it now and not in 8 years or even some months more, then you might say, yeah, we're going to invite all of those. By the way, for the vendors, it's more efficient as well because they just need to show up, right? Me as an ex-software vendor, we spent months on creating the proposals, going into negotiations, loop after loop, and not coming to an agreement, not knowing if we're going to win, which is it's also creates a lot of waste.
Okay.
So yeah, management support. And now how we approach that. So first of all, we do kind of an interview assessment, if you like, with the leadership, with the people involved in such a case. And we want to find out, do we get this frame conditions set that we need to make this a success? Because we have talked about this cultural differences, and most of our customers haven't been agile at all, right? But if we know there is this leadership support and there's the willingness to adapt, even going beyond current compliance and so forth, then we take that as a starting point. And then there are two main options to start. One is get first the knowledge yourself. I mean, a lot of companies have agile coaches. It's not rocket science what we are doing. So we can, an agile coach, an experienced agile coach, if they come into our 2 days class, they can run it from there. Okay. Second is that we jump in and become the coach for a pilot case, which often then leads to a transformation. It's a nice entry point, by the way. You're on a strategic level. And then this is several days of coaching, because we always want to enable internals to run the show. It's not the traditional consulting approach where we do all the work. So it's the cross-functional team that needs to do it. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So if I was just to summarize, I've understood. So obviously, as usual, the leadership sponsorship buy-in is critical, and you do an assessment to make sure that that's there, because it's not going to succeed. And the other thing is that part of the discussion is clarity on the size of the opportunity. So weighing up 8 years and how much will that cost in terms of the time of your legal department and your procurement team versus 5 days to know which is go and no go, and having a clear discussion around those aspects. And the rest of it, I get it's around the process of Lean-Agile. But essentially, those are the critical discussions. So this is the initial thing.
Yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, any other question? Great discussion. I mean, we could continue forever.
Now I am going to take the opportunity to say it's been an eye-opener. I've been working all my life in financial services and government, and those are very difficult procurement processes and contracts. And seeing that one of the, I'm going to remove the video, and one of the big benefits I see in this approach is that you are actually helping the project to succeed by approaching the contract in this way, because you are establishing ways of working and you are making sure that you have a better alignment of objectives and of understanding of the scope. So yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Very much.
And you're so right. Often the challenge is not the vendor, it's really on the customer side, because they don't know, or they have competing objectives, and they have never ever had an alignment internally. And we just need to start thinking outside of the box. So for example, with these trains that I mentioned, I made the proposal, what if we invite 5, 6 vendors and they show up with their most modern train, and we invite stakeholder groups from like disabled people organizations and others, and we just visit the train and let's see what are their needs on the subject, instead of just specifying our assumptions and wasting our time on that. So yeah, I could talk forever. It's a pleasure. Thanks so much. I think we need to make a stop here. I will keep in touch with Radhika and Emily. Thanks again for the opportunity, for sharing that. And yeah, let's see if we can organize something together, Richard and Stuart.